Good afternoon, VMworld, and good afternoon to folks around the world who are watching live. And if you could just give me one moment, there's a little girl, little 5-year-old girl who's watching me on the East Coast live right now. So, hi, Zoe. Hey, family comes first, right? So my name is Brian Trainor. I am a senior systems engineer for Unicom Systems. We're a local VMware provider in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have offices worldwide, but our local office is primarily focused on infrastructure consulting. So what I want to talk today about is automatic remediation. Are we there yet? So a little background behind this topic. 2 years ago, Nick Collier and Dan Mitchell gave a great presentation on the self-healing data center, how to build a self-healing data center with vCenter Orchestrator. And being from operations, this topic really resonated with me. I had too many midnight emergencies where I had to run into the office and bring a system back online. And so I looked at ways that we could have the data center remediate itself. Okay, so thankfully, virtualization has helped a lot with this. There are remediation capabilities already built into vSphere, and it also pulls us away from the hardware. We're no longer tied to the hardware. And even before virtualization, we also had other redundant capabilities. Right? We had N+1 redundancy across the entire infrastructure stack. But my concern was more, once we get beyond redundancy, our remediation options grow a little slim, right? If a virtual machine starts to run out of resources or it's pegged on 100% usage, what happens? The application starts to hang. How do we remediate that? Or what if an application, or what if a system, it becomes degraded and the application is at risk? Okay, so how do we remediate things like that? We have all kinds of monitoring tools out there. Most of them don't have any kind of ability to corrective action, right? There's VM Turbo. That's an excellent product. It does have the ability to take action, to make corrections. But what about vRealize Operations Manager? Okay. That's been a great product. Unfortunately, up till now, it hasn't had that ability to automatically correct problems in the environment. Now, back in December, vRealize Operations Manager 6.0 was released, and along came automated remediation. And quite honestly, I thought that sounded like automated remediation, right? Well, what I soon discovered when I started working with this and started working with some of the recommendations and the actions and all of the predictive analytics, the smart alerts, supermetrics, customized policies, all of this plays into the recommendations. But when you start looking at that and looking at these recommendations, well, you can see that this is an example recommendation. And in that recommendation, there is a button there to launch a corrective action. In this case, we've got high CPU. Well, there's a box there to set the CPU count. Okay, and if we click on that, then it gives me some modifiable points right there, so I can actually increase the CPU count. It makes a recommendation on how many CPUs to add, but I can also make some changes. I can request a snapshot or tell it whether the power off should be allowed, just things like this. But the problem with this, though, is that human intervention is still required. Okay? So we're not quite there, and I realized there was a big difference between automated and automatic. Because automatic is when there's no human intervention required. And that's what I was really looking for. So I had to go start searching for some good out-of-the-box solution, something that was homegrown. So I looked at, SNMP traps, all right? vRealize Operations sends out all kinds of, or it has the ability to send out SNMP traps. But I realized that there's really no way to filter the information, no way that I was able to find. Last year, or with vCenter Operations Manager, the previous version, there was a workflow remediation package. Well, that's not available for the newer version. So didn't think that was going to work. I looked at email. how to trigger a workflow using email. And again, there's a lot of data that can be carried in an email. You can tie it to certain alerts, certain policies. But the problem with that is that it wouldn't automatically trigger that workflow. And you could you basically send an email to a mailbox, and you can have a workflow run periodically to check that mailbox, and then grab the data, and then launch the workflow. So then I looked at REST notifications. There's a rich API library built into both vRealize Operations Manager as well as vRealize Orchestrator. And so, I noticed that there was a way to be able to link an alarm or an alert to a REST service, to be able to launch a workflow using the REST APIs. Now, the challenge with this, though, is that the REST notification out of the box, I had a problem. I had a challenge just trying to get that to send certain information. So I came across basically a homegrown custom REST notification. It was created by Pierre Laney, a French virtualization consultant. And so I started working with this, and I realized, well, here's the answer at this point to be able to send certain information to vRealize Orchestrator. So I decided to come up with a use case. So my use case was being able to put a host into maintenance mode if a fault, a hardware fault, was discovered. So I've got basically the quick overview of the steps needed to be able to configure this. Well, we configure the Orchestrator workflow. We copy the workflow ID, configure the REST notification, configure the alert. I'll walk through each of those steps. So configure the workflow. All right, well, here we've got the entire workflow presented here. I'm not going to get into the details at this moment, but basically we needed to build this or set some kind of a workflow so that I could grab the workflow ID, because I needed this for my REST notification. So I grabbed the workflow ID, I plugged that into my REST notification. Okay, again, this is the custom version of this, and I plug that information. You see down at the bottom of that screen, there's a URL. That is what's going to make the call to vRealize Orchestrator and to this workflow. And then the request field, that's where the parameters, basically the data for that alert is sent over to Orchestrator. And then I had to configure the alert. And with this alert that I configured, up in the upper right corner of that window, you see the REST notification that I just created. And then I set the other variables as far as the level of criticality. What would be the notification trigger? I set the alert status, and an important note about that alert status, I needed to make sure that it was only a new alert and not any other alert. When testing this, discovered that when this was not set, once the alert was canceled, then the workflow was fired again. So as far as the workflow execution, so here we have the top line there is just getting the data from the alert. Okay, the Orchestrator will then parse out the data that it needs. In this case, it just needs the host. So it grabs the host, and then it sends it to the next part of the workflow where it puts together an email. Okay, and in this particular workflow, I had to build out an email that would be sent out to a recipient to request approval. Now, again, this part actually is user intervention, right? Well, I do have another workflow in which I took out that entire line, in which I would go just straight from get host from alert all the way down to enter maintenance. Okay, so we don't even need to have the email approval. Well, I included that email approval in there just so that there was the option for that increased control. Okay, if a host is going to go into maintenance mode, some shops are going to want to know that, and they're going to want to have a little bit more control over that. So this particular line allows you to do that. So the email goes out with the requisite information in it, the host name, the link to be able to launch or basically the link to be able to send a response to this workflow. As the workflow is waiting for that custom event, it's waiting for that response. Once it receives that response, then it enters maintenance mode, and all the virtual machines are evacuated off of the host, and another email is sent out notifying the recipient that the host is in maintenance mode. And then the administrator can then take corrective action on that server as far as taking care of the hardware issue. Now, applications, the VMs, they're all protected because now they're on hosts that have no hardware issue. Okay, so this is a way that we can take corrective action to protect those production workloads. So now, is this ready for production? Well, every company, every organization has to go through and really think about the criteria here. Okay, what about supportability? All right, well, so I got this particular custom REST notification from Pierre. Okay, from his website. He published that, and so all over this particular article that where he talks about how to install this, well, he has it plastered on there that this is not for production use. Okay, so many shops won't be able to use something like this. It's not supported. What we're hoping though is that VMware will build in a similar functionality within the default REST notification. Okay, so think about supportability. Is this something that VMware stands behind? Think about the whole picture. Now, a lot of shops are concerned about corrective action being taken automatically, understanding that there's a lot more to think about. When certain alerts occur, maybe there's a lot more going on underneath the surface that needs investigation before that corrective action takes place. And so this is, sometimes we need to look at the entire picture. What's really going on behind the scenes, right? What about change management protocol? Okay, if a change is going to be made, even if it's corrective action, maybe there's an approval process that needs to take place. Maybe there's a change management database that needs to be updated. You can certainly work that into the workflow, but you have to be very thoughtful about those particular issues. What about the business context? Think about the entire business. You know, does your business require the level of SLA that something like this would be able to provide? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you don't need something like this. Or they're just different thoughts about what the business needs are. And then, of course, rigorous testing. You need to be able to test these workflows. You need to make sure that they're actually doing what you intended for them to do. Interestingly, with this particular use case, this is a hardware failure. And so it's hard to test a hardware failure. So I had to get a little bit creative with how to test that. So I did create some faults, basically based off of network faults on that workflow or on that operations manager to be able to kick off this workflow. But you need to go through some real rigorous testing. Finally, just some resources. See, these are the resources that I use just to be able to work up this workflow. The vRealize Orchestrator Cookbook, book by Daniel Langenhan, is a phenomenal book. Some of the workflow recipes in that cookbook, I copied word for word or item for item from those in the workflow that I used. Okay, so you can get a lot of great information from there. The vRealize Operations Manager book by Scott Norris, Christopher Slater, another great book. Scott Norris, I got a lot of information from his blog site. The custom REST notification blog post, if you want to check out that custom REST notification, there's Pierre's blog address. And then some other resources, the vcoteam.info site and the vmwarelearning.com site. There's some dated information on there, but still a lot of great basic information around vRealize Orchestrator. If you have any questions, want to reach out to me to learn more about how I put this into place, you can certainly reach out to me. There's my email. You can find me, follow me on Twitter. I'm at BETrainer, and you can check out my blog, mountvirtual.com. And with that, I think that's it. Thank you very much.